If the Arctic melts, will polar bears still exist? A question for the future of Earth. In the far north of the planet, where the sun can disappear for months on end and temperatures drop to -50 degrees Celsius, one animal has become a symbol of resilience and strength: the polar bear. With snow-white fur, deep black eyes, and extraordinary swimming ability, the polar bear is not only the top predator of the Arctic, but also a symbol of the wild. But behind that majestic image lies a harsh reality. The polar bear's habitat is disappearing. According to scientific research data, Arctic sea ice has declined dramatically in recent decades. If this trend continues, within just 80 to 100 years, summer ice flows, where bears hunt and raise their cubs, may almost completely vanish. This raises a big question. Will polar bears still exist when the Arctic melts? This article will take you through the full picture. From the current state of climate change, its direct impacts on polar bears, to possible future scenarios. This is not just the story of one animal, but a mirror reflecting the fragile relationship between humans and nature. The reality of Arctic ice melting, a feverish planet. The Arctic has long been compared to the Earth's giant air conditioner. The ice and snow here reflect sunlight, helping maintain global temperature balance. But over the past few decades, this air conditioner has been breaking down alarmingly. Scientific data. According to NASA and the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, summer sea ice in the Arctic has decreased by about 40% compared to the 1980s. September 2012 was recorded as the year with the lowest ice extent on record, only 3.39 million square kilometers, the smallest since satellites began tracking in 1979. Arctic temperatures are rising 2 to 3 times faster than the global average, a phenomenon known as Arctic amplification. The domino effect of ice melting. When ice melts, the dark ocean surface is exposed, absorbing more heat, leading to faster ice melt. This vicious cycle makes climate change increasingly difficult to control. Moreover, melting ice releases methane trapped in permafrost, a greenhouse gas many times stronger than CO2. If all Arctic summer ice disappears, global sea levels could rise by 0.5 to 1 meter, threatening hundreds of millions of people living in coastal areas. But not only humans, polar bears will be the first victims. Polar bears, a predator entirely dependent on ice. The polar bear, Ursus maritimus, is the largest land mammal, weighing from 350 to over 600 kilograms, with adult males reaching up to 1,000 kilograms. Unlike many other bears, they almost entirely rely on sea ice. Ice, the irreplaceable hunting ground. Polar bears' main food is ringed and bearded seals. They use an extremely keen sense of smell to detect seals breathing through ice holes. When a seal surfaces, the bear launches a deadly ambush. This hunting technique requires patience, sometimes lasting hours. Without ice, polar bears cannot access seals, the fat-rich food essential to survive the harsh winter. An adult bear needs at least one seal every 10 days to maintain energy. Without ice, they are forced to turn to fish, seabirds, or even human garbage. But these are only temporary solutions, never a substitute for seals. Direct impacts of melting ice. Malnutrition and starvation. Many studies have recorded polar bears becoming emaciated, lacking energy, with high cub mortality rates. Longer travel. Bears are forced to swim tens of kilometers to find ice, sometimes leading to drowning. In 2004, scientists recorded a polar bear swimming for more than 9 consecutive days before dying. Conflict with humans. As ice disappears, bears invade coastal settlements in search of food, causing dangerous attacks. Population decline. According to the World Wildlife Fund, WWF, there are currently about 22,000 to 31,000 polar bears. Many models predict that if ice melt continues, 2/3 of polar bears could disappear by 2050, the domino impact on the ecosystem. When talking about polar bears, many think of them as solitary predators on the ice. But in reality, polar bears play a crucial role in the food chain and ecological balance of the Arctic. If they disappear, a domino effect will ripple through seals, the ocean ecosystem, and even the global climate. Imbalance in the food chain. Seal population explosion. Normally, polar bears regulate seal populations. Without bears, seals could multiply rapidly, consuming too many fish and crustaceans. Fish depletion, Arctic cod and herring are vital food sources for seals, seabirds, and humans. If fish stocks collapse, the entire food chain, from seals to whales, seabirds to fishermen, will be affected. Impact on other species. Beluga and narwhal whales, these compete directly with seals for food. More seals mean fewer whales. Seabirds, gulls, petrels, and many Arctic birds depend on small fish. With fewer fish, seabird numbers will plummet. Humans. Inuit and other indigenous communities rely on fishing and seal hunting. Ecological imbalance could destroy their culture and livelihood. Impact on global climate. The disappearance of polar bears symbolizes the collapse of the Arctic ecosystem. As ice melts, methane escapes from permafrost, further heating the Earth. This alters ocean currents, impacting the climate of Europe, Asia, and even Vietnam. A tropical storm in the Pacific or an unusual cold wave in Europe can be indirectly linked to Arctic ice. In other words, the fate of polar bears is tied to the fate of the entire planet. 3 scenarios in the next 100 years. So, what might happen to polar bears in the next 80 to 100 years? Scientists have built many models, but they can be summarized into 3 major scenarios. Scenario 1. Extinction in the wild. If humanity does nothing, and greenhouse gas emissions keep rising, by the end of the 21st century, the Arctic will have no summer ice. Polar bears will lose their hunting grounds, and their populations will collapse. In this case, polar bears may only survive in zoos or genetic museums, places where humans preserve DNA for research. This would be a tragedy, not only for biodiversity, but also for our faith in protecting nature. Scenario 2. Semi-wild conservation. In this scenario, humans could establish artificial sanctuaries. For example, creating artificial islands with manufactured ice, or raising polar bears in semi-wild conditions in Canada or Russia. Though not ideal, this rescue approach could prevent complete extinction. Future children might still see polar bears, not only in photos or documentaries. However, this also risks stripping bears of natural instincts, turning them into a species dependent on technology rather than truly wild. Scenario 3. Genetic technology and artificial evolution. A bolder scenario mentioned by scientists is using gene editing technology like CRISPR to hybridize polar bears with brown bears, grizzlies. In fact, such hybrids already exist in the wild, called growler bears or pizzly bears. These hybrids adapt better to warmer climates, climb mountains, eat varied foods, and retain some hunting skills. In the future, humans could even deliberately modify genes to create an upgraded version of polar bears, enabling survival in the 22nd century. But this raises ethical questions. Do we have the right to redesign a species just to keep it alive? Or should we focus instead on preserving their natural environment. The fate of polar bears is our fate. Polar bears are extraordinary animals. They have survived hundreds of thousands of years, enduring harsh ice ages, adapting to conditions few species could. But this time, the challenge comes from humans themselves, who have warmed the planet through greed and carelessness. The question, if the Arctic melts, will polar bears still exist, is not only a biological question, it is a test of humanity's conscience. If we let polar bears vanish, it means we have failed to maintain ecological balance. And when ecosystems collapse, humans will be the next victims. The 21st century is the decisive moment. Actions to cut emissions, protect the environment, and educate communities will determine whether polar bears remain in the world of our descendants. When we look into the deep eyes of a polar bear mother holding her cub on a drifting ice floe, we do not just see the image of a species about to vanish. We also see the image of humanity itself, small, fragile before nature's power, yet still with the chance to change its destiny.